Hi everyone, Lorna here again. This is part 2 of police harassment over the years. Thought I'd take a walk along this beautiful beach today and have a walk and talk. Nice spot. So yeah, there was an earlier time that I forgot to report on, which was, I've just thought of police as bugs from very early on. Around the age of 10, my older sister and I used to play with a group of kids. We didn't have skate parks back in the day, so we were just doing what kids do and playing around the back of the shops on our skateboards. And the police used to come in their paddy wagons. This happened a couple of times. Pick up some of the young boys, 13, 14-year-olds, put them in the back of the paddy wagon and take them off, and we wouldn't see them for weeks. And look, back then we weren't, the boys were very quiet about everything that had gone on when they got back. When we seen them a couple of weeks later, but they would still have, bruises and things like that. So they'd obviously been beaten up and God knows what else. So that was the police in Kingsford. Totally corrupt police. This is going back into the 80s. So I had no trust in the police from very early on, because I seen with my own eyes what they were doing. Now, I did talk last time about the episode where my partner, his name was John, my partner and I went through the home invasion. But I did forget to mention that the partner that he'd plucked me out of a very violent relationship. So I thought it was a good relationship because I wasn't being beaten. The partner before had been, he had a demonic attachment actually, and he became extremely violent towards me. He tried to run me over, held knives to my throat, black eyes, fat lips, all the rest of it. So, and ironically, his surname was Sheriff. So there's always been, that's why I think it's part of my mission to do this, because there has always been police. And ironically, like I said, for his name to be Sheriff, his surname was Sheriff as well. So just at this beach, it's bringing me back to a vision I had when I was very young. Must have been 9 or 10 at the time. And I had a vision where I was walking along a beach, something like this. Completely deserted beach though, and up ahead I saw a dead whale on the sand. Well, I thought it was dead, and I walked up to it. A curious child walked up, and as I got close to it, its eye opened, and I thought, oh, it's alive, so I kept walking towards it, and suddenly the eye started extending out from the whale towards me, and then I became fearful, and I started running away from the whale, from the eye, and as I was running, I was looking behind me and it just kept extending out and out and out. And next thing, I wasn't running on the sand, I was running in the scars. And years later, my school took us to a movie, 2001 Space Odyssey. And I was just blown away because it just felt so much like that vision that I've had within this, being in the stars. And then many years on from that, I eventually seen the sonic symbol, you know, the triangle with the eye, and I realised that that was the eye, the exact eye that I'd seen. So, yeah, so that was a bit bizarre, but it's also, if I interpret that vision, it is part of my mission to be here to expose the evil within the Freemasonic fraternity, because I've been put in place time and time again to see exactly how evil it is. Yeah, so going forward, like I said, I thought it was wonderful that, you know, he'd plucked me out of that relationship. And I did forget to mention that I was actually, when we went through the home invasion, I was actually pregnant at the time. They've terrorised me on every pregnancy. I was so traumatised from that I did end up losing that baby. And every subsequent pregnancy I had, I was put through some sort of horrific situation. I was molested with my next child by the doctor that was doing the prenatal examination. And like I said in the previous video, even my daughter now, you know, was she had that trauma with nearly losing her son. So, is it generational curse? Is it is it part of the targeting? I don't know, but it is ongoing. So my eldest daughter, like I said, I was molested when I was pregnant with her by the doctor. I got no justice for that either. There never really has been any justice here on earth for me, but I know that there's God's justice and it's coming. It's actually already been done. With the spiritual battle that's going on, and it just needs to present itself here on earth, which I know it will. So, yeah, so going back to that, so I thought I was being plucked from a horrific relationship, but it was actually out of the frying pan and into the fire. So the next episode of the police was that I just happened to be in this particular place where I seen this guy get pulled over by a whole bunch of police cars. They just zoomed around his car, and as he stepped out of his car, they handcuffed him and all the rest of it. But I didn't really, you know, it wasn't any of my business what was going on. But what I was concerned about was it was a very hot day here, like over 30 degrees Celsius, and while they were doing all their thugging, they'd left the man's baby in the enclosed car, red-faced, screaming, and obviously really upset, you know, and I was concerned for the baby. So I went into a local business there and went and told them what was going on, because the police wouldn't listen to me when I said, please let me get the baby out. They just blew me off. And so I put my neck out basically because from that event, when that man went to court about what had happened, how the police had actually set him up with drugs, and I hadn't known any of that. But it was how I'd seen them pull up, and they had lied about the whole story of how all that went down. So the man's barrister found me and asked me if I'd testify at his court case, which I did. And at that court case, I had a police officer come up to me and he walked up behind me and he said, "Watch your back, bitch." And then I said, when it was nearly my turn to testify, I told the barrister that I was afraid to because I'd been threatened. And with my history of the police, from going through that home invasion and the torture and all the rest of it, obviously I had a great fear of the police by that stage. And anyway, he talked me into it. The barrister talked me into it. And while I was up on the stand, he said, he asked me what had happened, what the policeman had said. I said it on the stand. He told me to watch your back, bitch. And he said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because it's the truth. Yes, I am afraid, but it's the truth. I mean, even me doing these little videos, of course I'm afraid, but it's the truth. So, and God's got me. So I know I'm protected." So because of that, some years down the track, I was asked to testify at a Royal Commission into police corruption. And during that, I didn't realise that the police officers who'd done the home invasion, they had been involved with, there's a very big case over here about a police officer called Roger Rogerson. He's since passed away. But these gang of thugs that were supposedly the drug squad and keeping the streets clean, were doing the exact opposite. So they were flooding the streets with heroin, flooding the street. They were just, like I said, they'd raid dealers, and then they would get them back out on the streets, the grubs, and make profit. So it was all business for them. And they were renowned for home invasions, which I only found out years later. Even after the Royal Commission, I didn't even know that all of this was going on in the Royal Commission. I just thought it was, whatever. But that, the head of the drug squad, the guy who was leading the gang of thugs who broke in and terrorised me all those years ago, he was actually there, unbeknownst to me. We're going to call him GS, that's his initials. Isn't that ironic too, considering gang stalking? Yeah, GS were his initials. And after the Royal Commission, because he had been implicated as a person who, there was actually someone that testified that he had been the one who'd actually murdered this woman, whose name was Sally Ann Huckstep. She did a big story she was a witness against police corruption. She came forward after her partner had been murdered and told it all, basically. She told it all about what thugs they are and how things really work. And yeah, I'll just hang on a minute. she was found, so he was implicated in her murder. She was found drowned in Centennial Park on the 6th of February 1986, and GS was implicated. And prior to the trial, the prime witness suddenly retracted his statement. How odd. He'd obviously been got at. And there was many other times that witnesses had been got at. So if you want to look that up, it's Sally Ann Huckstedt, and you can find that on YouTube. There's a 60-minute interview with her where she sits and just plainly tells the truth, and it's really bizarre to hear it, because you know, even the reporter's sort of scratching his head going, so the police are actually the ones? And she said, yes, I know, it sounds unbelievable, but it's true. And I quote her words. She said, I believe that the New South Wales Drug Squad and the Armed Hold-Up Squad are totally corrupt, and they feed on the very activities that they are supposed to stop. It gives a very different meaning to me for when Jesus' words, when he cast the demons into the pigs. Yeah, it gives a whole different meaning to that. So yeah, I've been doing a little bit of research into all of what really went down around that time, and I really was kept in the darkness for such a long period of time. But my constant prayer has been, let all that was in the darkness be brought to light, and it seems that that is happening. So thank you, God. And for everyone else who's speaking out and telling the truth about all that's gone down, no matter how many years ago, keep going. Our voices need to be heard. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. I've forgotten how to turn my phone around again, so excuse me, but I hope you enjoyed that beautiful view, and just the ending of my story about police corruption. Obviously, like, they have ties with the underworld. Literally, they were called the underworld of the police. It used to be called police service, but it's now, the term now is police force, which is definitely more apt. I do hope one day to meet some honest police, but unfortunately my mission and my life has taken me to see the very deepest, darkest of what these people do. So, by the way, GS, after the Royal Commission, ended up probably being told to leave, but because there was too much on him, and they don't like to charge any of those in the Brotherhood, because, as you know, the judges and all that are in on it as well. So he ended up leaving the police force. It's called police force now because Australia is not under a constitution anymore. We are now, Australia is owned by this corporation. So that's all known fact as well, if you want to take the time to look that up. So they're not there to serve us. They're there to serve the corporation. But yeah, going back to GS, he is actually a senior executive in one of the bigger banks here in Australia. So yeah, that says a lot too, doesn't it? Anyway, that's it for today. God bless you all. So many years later, I forgot to mention, I'll just put this bit in. I did say in a previous video that my partner extremely violent, and I had decided to leave him. And as soon as I decided to leave him, it ramped up, and as it normally does in abusive relationships. So, yeah, just go back to an old video. It says all about him, but just keeping with the police thing. So, this man at this time had robbed my home, assaulted my daughter, assaulted me in a public place, assaulted me again when he assaulted my daughter at the time, had attempted to push his daughter in a pram through glass doors to get at me for a violent physical attack. Had threatened to snap her neck and throw her out the window in a car. It just went on. It was extreme violence. And he'd also stolen our family dog, our 10-year-old family dog, from us, and robbed my home. So, like I said, an AVO and a DVO is orders, lawful orders that mean that he can't come anywhere near me, or the children shouldn't be allowed to. And with all of that, we went in and reported there was four statements from neighbours, from all different people, stating that they'd seen him robbing my home. There was doctor's reports for the abuse that, he'd dealt out on me. And it was an open and shut case, is basically what I'm saying, to arrest him. And I went in and reported after the day that they took all the statements, and the sergeant that was there that was helping us. My children were traumatised. I was traumatised, obviously. We'd just been through a really brutal attack, and our home had been robbed. And we went in the next day. They said, come in and we'll go in with you, and make sure that you're safe while you can rummage whatever you can out of the wreckage that he'd left in the house, because whatever he couldn't steal he broke. Like, he couldn't take the fridge, so he just ripped out the gas lines. Like, just vicious. Took all our passports, blue books, birth certificates, everything, just to make life extremely difficult. And there was some sort of dark occult stuff going on there too, even though I'd never been involved in any of that, because I don't believe in messing with anyone's free will ever. But he'd left a death card, and I didn't own tarot cards. Left a death card on the fridge that he broke. So, there was ample evidence, and the police had stated that yes, he was going to be arrested the next day. And come the next day, and there was a completely different person on the desk with a really disdainful attitude at me, and told me that the sergeant that I spoke to yesterday wasn't available. He obviously wasn't part of the Brotherhood, in retrospect, and they couldn't help me. So yeah, if you don't know you're on a list when that kind of thing happens, you're on a list. And then it went on. I mean, life went to really to hell. If you think that was hellish, life went really to hell after that. Also, that partner, his cousin, was somewhere up in the police force as well. And when we were running from women's refuge to women's refuge, they had to keep on moving us because he had the federal police on us. So, for nothing, just because he wanted to take my daughter from me. So yeah, I can't think of any other police involvement, but obviously on the Masonic list. So anyway, once again, I was not helped. And also the solicitor who was supposed to organise for me to get sole custody, and he told me right at the start, open shut case, no problem. Can't believe the police did that they can help you, and that he should have been arrested for all of the evidence and da-da-da-da. And then it was almost like a flip the next time, which says to me he'd been spoken to by the Freemasons, and suddenly he didn't do his job. which caused so much strain, so much stress on myself and my family, and like I said, took us to hell. So yeah, it just all needs to be exposed. These are the days. Time is come. Also, I have absolutely no intention of unaliving myself. Just thought I'd put that in there. God bless.